Before we solve this question, let's go ahead and take a look at what it's actually asking. We're told that the sum of the consecutive odd integers from 1 to n is equal to 169, and we're asked what is n. So before we dive into this question, let's go ahead and interpret what this first sentence is telling us. The first sentence tells us that the sum of the consecutive odd integers from 1 to n is 169. We actually have a formula that represents how to find the sum of consecutive odd integers for a certain range of numbers. So to find the sum of consecutive odd integers, we can actually use the number of odd integers and here it'll be from 1 to n squared will actually give us the sum of all of those consecutive odd integers. And we're told that this is actually equal to 169. So if we can find the number of odd integers from 1 to n, we can go ahead and plug in here and then be able to find what n is. So let's think a little bit more about how we would find the number of odd integers from 1 to n. Normally, we would have to consider both cases where n might be even or n be odd, because that might change the number of odd integers that we have. But if we take a look at the answer choices, which are all the possible values for n, they're all odd. So we can actually rule out the case where n would be even. So continuing on where n is odd, we can represent the number of odd integers from 1 to n as n plus 1 divided by 2. And this would be squared to continue with our formula, and that's equal to 169. Now this is actually an equation now that we can solve. It represents the sum of the consecutive integers the consecutive odd integers from 1 to n, and it equals 169. This is something that we can solve for n, so let's go ahead and do so. To get rid of this exponent, we go ahead and take the square root of both sides. Oh, this says 162. Okay. Let's fix that real quick. And we'll switch that back to 169. So taking a square root of both sides, we would normally get a plus or minus to account for the even root. But since n is definitely positive, if we work it out, we would end up ruling out that negative option anyways. So we can just forgo that, knowing that we can rule that out right away, that n is not going to be odd. And the square root of 169 is going to give us 13. Clearing fractions, multiplying both sides by 2, we have n plus 1 equals 26. Pulling this over here, solving for n, we have n is equal to 25. And that's answer choice A.